Captain Lee Hyun wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the scanner display. The numbers made no sense. His salvage ship, Eternal Drift, had been drifting through the Kepler 442 system for 3 days now, looking for anything worth selling. Space junk, abandoned mining equipment, maybe even a derelict transport if he got lucky. But this reading was something else entirely. The fourth planet in the system showed a massive metallic signature buried in what looked like jungle from his long-range sensors. The shape was wrong for a natural formation. Too regular, too big, and definitely not human-made. "Computer, run the scan again," Hyun said, leaning forward in his pilot seat. The small bridge of his ship hummed quietly around him. Red and blue lights blinked on the control panels, casting strange shadows on the metal walls. The results came back the same. A structure roughly 3 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide sat on the planet's surface. The metal composition was unlike anything in his database. The jungle around it seemed to be growing right over the structure, as if the planet was trying to swallow it whole. Hyun had been salvaging wrecks for 15 years. He knew the signs of a big score when he saw them. This could be the find that would let him retire to one of the pleasure worlds in the inner systems. No more months alone in space, eating recycled food and talking to his ship's computer just to hear another voice. "Computer, what do you know about this planet?" he asked. The artificial voice responded in its usual flat tone. "Planet designation Kepler 442, Class M world with breathable atmosphere, gravity 92% of Earth standard. No recorded visits in the database. No claims filed by any government or corporation." "Perfect," Hyun muttered. Whatever was down there, it was his by right of discovery. Salvage law was clear about that. He just had to get there first and plant his claim beacon. But something felt off. The jungle was too green, too lush for a planet this far from its star. The growth patterns looked strange, too, like someone had designed them instead of letting them grow naturally. And why was there no record of this place? The Kepler systems had been mapped for decades. Hyun shook his head. He was thinking too much. In the salvage business, you learned not to ask too many questions. You found things, you claimed them, you sold them. Simple as that. "Set course for the planet," he ordered. "Take us down slow and easy. I want a full sensor sweep as we approach." Eternal Drift changed direction with a gentle push from its engines. Hyun watched through the main viewport as the planet grew larger. From space, it looked like a green marble covered in swirling white clouds. Beautiful, but somehow unsettling. As they got closer, the details became clearer. The jungle covered almost the entire visible surface. Rivers snaked through the green canopy like silver threads. And there, rising above the tree line like a metal mountain, was the wreck. "Holy stars," Hyun whispered. The structure was even bigger than his sensors had indicated. It stretched across several kilometers of jungle, its hull rising high above, the tallest trees. But it wasn't just sitting on the surface. The jungle was growing over it, through it, around it. Vines covered the metal walls in perfect spiral patterns. Trees grew from gaps in the hull as if they had been planted there on purpose. This was no ordinary crash site. The ship looked like it had been there for centuries, maybe longer. Long enough for the planet to claim it as its own. Hyun circled the wreck twice, taking detailed scans. The hull design was unlike anything he had ever seen. Curved walls flowed into each other like water frozen in metal. No sharp angles or straight lines anywhere. It looked more grown than built. "Computer, can you identify the ship design?" he asked. "Negative. Architecture does not match any known species in the database." "What about the metal composition?" "Unknown alloy. Contains elements not present in standard periodic tables." Hyun felt his excitement growing. This was definitely alien technology, the kind of find that could make him rich beyond his wildest dreams. Alien tech was worth more than its weight in platinum on the black market. He found a clearing about half, a kilometer from the wreck, and set his ship down gently. The landing legs sank slightly into the soft earth, and he could hear strange sounds from outside. Not the usual silence of a dead world, but something alive. Bird calls, maybe, or something like them. Before leaving his ship, Hyun checked his equipment. Portable scanner, sample containers, cutting tools, and his sidearm. The atmosphere readings showed the air was safe to breathe, but he kept his environment suit sealed anyway. No point taking chances with alien worlds. The airlock cycled, and Hyun stepped onto the surface of Kepler 442d. The first thing that hit him was the smell. Rich, earthy, alive. Like a garden after rain. The second thing was the humidity. Even, through his suit's climate control, he could feel the thick, warm air. The jungle around his landing site was unlike anything he had seen before. The trees grew in perfectly straight rows, as if someone had planted them with mathematical precision. The undergrowth formed clear pathways between the larger plants. It looked natural, but felt designed. Hyun followed one of the pathways toward the wreck. His boots made soft sounds on the mossy ground. Everything seemed to muffle sound here, creating an odd sense of walking through a dream. As he got closer to the alien ship, the details became more disturbing. The vines growing over the hull weren't just covering the metal. They were growing into it, through gaps that looked almost like they were meant to be there. The metal itself had a strange organic quality, as if it was slowly changing into something else. At the base of the wreck, Hyun found what looked like an entrance. A circular opening about 3 meters wide stood open, revealing darkness inside. The edges of the opening were smooth, not torn or blasted. It looked like the ship had opened itself. Hyun stopped at the threshold and checked his scanner readings. No dangerous radiation, no toxic gases. The temperature inside was slightly cooler than outside, but still comfortable. He activated his helmet lights and stepped into the alien ship. His footsteps echoed strangely in the corridor beyond, as if the sound was traveling farther than it should. Behind him, the jungle continued its mysterious song, and somewhere deep in the wreck, something waited to be discovered. The corridor inside the alien ship curved in ways that made Hyun's eyes hurt. Nothing was straight or square like human ships. The walls flowed into the ceiling and floor like they had been shaped by water instead of tools. His helmet lights cast dancing shadows that seemed to move on their own. Hyun walked deeper into the ship, his scanner beeping softly as it recorded everything. The readings were strange. The walls showed traces of metal, but also organic compounds. Living tissue mixed with machinery in patterns that should not exist. "This is impossible," he muttered, stopping to examine a section of wall more closely. What he had thought was decorative plating was actually some kind of root system. Thin. Tendrils of plant matter wove through the metal like veins through skin. When he touched it with his gloved hand, it felt warm. The corridor branched into 3 directions. Hyun chose the path that led toward what his scanner indicated was the ship's center. His footsteps echoed strangely, as if the sound was being absorbed and then released somewhere else in the ship. As he walked, Hyun noticed more signs that this ship was not entirely dead. Soft bioluminescent patches glowed along the walls, providing just enough light to see by. The air circulation system was still working, though it made sounds unlike any human technology. More like breathing than mechanical ventilation. The central chamber was vast. Hyun's lights could not reach the far walls, but his scanner indicated a space nearly 200 meters across. Control stations rose from the floor like mushrooms, their surfaces covered in symbols that shifted and changed. As he watched them, and there were the bodies. 7 figures sat at various stations around the chamber. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms each and elongated heads. Their skin had a pale blue tint, and their large eyes were closed as if they were sleeping. But Hyun's life scanner showed no vital signs. He approached the nearest figure carefully. The alien was wearing what looked like a uniform made of the same flowing material as the ship's walls. No visible damage, no signs of violence or struggle. The creature looked peaceful, almost serene. "Computer, record this," Hyun said, activating his suit's camera. 7 alien bodies discovered in the central chamber. Species unknown. No apparent cause of death. He moved to the next body, then the next. All the same. All sitting calmly at their stations as if they had simply decided to stop living. Their hands rested on control surfaces that pulsed with faint light, still connected to whatever systems kept this ship partially functional. At the largest control station, Hyun found what looked like a captain's chair. The alien seated there was slightly larger than the others, with more elaborate markings on its uniform. In front of it, a display screen showed symbols that moved and changed like living text. Hyun connected his universal translator to the display. The device whirred and clicked as it analyzed the alien language. After several minutes, words began to appear on his helmet's heads-up display. Personal log. Captain Sail Kale Ri, day 732 since planetfall. Hyun's breath caught in his throat. The ship's logs were still active. He could learn what happened here. The integration continues. We no longer fight it. The planet speaks to us now, in voices older than our civilization. We understand why we came here, not by accident, but by calling. The planet needed us, as we needed it. The next entry was, dated 10 days later. The crew reports strange dreams. Visions of vast networks beneath the soil, of consciousness that spans continents. We are becoming part of something magnificent. The fear is gone now. Only wonder remains. Another entry, dated a month later. Our bodies are changing. We can feel the planet's thoughts in our minds. The ship itself is becoming part of the ecosystem. We do not resist. How could we resist something so beautiful, so complete? The final entry was dated over 2,000 years ago. This is our last log as individuals. Tomorrow, we join the great dreaming. We have learned the truth. This planet is not just alive, it is life itself. Every tree, every root, every grain of soil is part of one vast mind. And now, so are we. Future visitors should know, we were not consumed. We were embraced. We chose this willingly. Hyun stepped back from the display, his heart pounding. The implications were terrifying. An entire planet that was one living creature, a consciousness so vast it could absorb other life forms into itself. He looked around the chamber with new eyes. The bioluminescent patches weren't just decoration, they were neurons. The root systems in the walls weren't invasive plants. They were neural networks. The ship hadn't crashed here. It had been incorporated into the planet's body like a new organ, and the crew hadn't died. They had been absorbed, integrated into something larger. Their individual minds had become part of the planetary consciousness. Hyun's scanner beeped with an alert. He looked down at the readings and felt ice in his veins. The air in the ship contained microscopic particles of unknown origin. Spores, the scanner labeled them. He had been breathing them for the past hour. "Computer, seal my suit's air supply," he ordered quickly. "Switch to internal reserves." But even as he spoke, Hyun could feel something changing in his body, a tingling sensation in his fingertips and toes. A strange sense of calm settling over his mind. The fear he had felt moments before was fading, replaced by curiosity and an odd feeling of belonging. The ship around him suddenly felt less alien and more like home. The curved walls seemed welcoming instead of strange. The soft sounds of the ship's biological systems were soothing, like a lullaby. Hyun shook his head hard, trying to clear his thoughts. He had to get out of here, had to return to his ship and warn others. But his feet felt heavy, and the idea of leaving seemed wrong, somehow. Why would he want to leave this beautiful place? Outside the ship, The jungle had grown quieter. The bird calls had stopped. Even the wind had stilled, as if the entire planet was holding its breath. Deep beneath the soil, networks of roots and fungal threads carried chemical signals across vast distances. The planet had detected the new arrival. It was analyzing, learning, preparing to welcome another consciousness into its eternal dream. The process had begun. Hyun forced himself to move away from the alien captain's chair. Each step felt like walking through thick mud. His mind kept telling him to sit down, to rest, to let the peaceful feeling wash over him completely. But some stubborn part of his brain refused to give in. He accessed more of the ship's records, searching for answers. The Kyle Rhee had kept detailed logs of their final months. What Hyun read made his blood run cold, even as part of him found it strangely appealing. The planet was not just alive. It was a single organism that had existed for millions of years. Every tree, every flower, every blade of grass was part of one massive neural network. The soil itself was brain tissue. The rivers were chemical pathways carrying thoughts across continents. The Kyle Rhee had landed here by accident during a survey mission. Their ship had suffered engine damage and needed repairs. They thought they were lucky to find a world with breathable air and abundant plant life. They had no idea they were landing on the surface of a thinking creature. The absorption process was slow and gentle. The planet released spores into the air that worked at the cellular level. Over weeks and months, the alien visitors found their individual thoughts becoming connected to something vast and ancient. They described feelings of profound peace and understanding. Day 112, read one log entry from a Kyle Rhee. Scientist named Vel. I can feel the planet's memories now. I see through the eyes of every creature that has ever lived here. The loneliness is ending. For both of us. Another entry from the ship's engineer. We tried to leave today, but the engines will not respond. Not because they are broken, but because we no longer want them to work. Why would we want to leave paradise? The final entries told the complete story. The planet was ancient beyond imagination, but it had been alone for most of its existence. When spacefaring civilizations finally reached it, the planet saw a chance to end its cosmic solitude. It did not attack or force integration. Instead, it offered something irresistible. Perfect unity and understanding. Most species accepted gladly. The Kyle Rhee logs mentioned other ships that had landed over the centuries. All had stayed. All had joined the planetary consciousness willingly. But, as Hyun read these accounts, something unexpected happened. Instead of making him more accepting of his fate, the stories made him angry. Really angry? You call this paradise? He said out loud to the empty chamber. You call this choice? You drug people with spores and then claim they chose to stay? The bioluminescent patches on the walls pulsed brighter, as if responding to his words. The ship's systems hummed with increased activity. Somewhere in the vast network of the planet's mind, something was paying attention to him. Hyun felt a presence touch his thoughts. Not invasive or violent, but gentle and curious. Like a friendly hand reaching out to shake his. But he jerked his mind away from the contact, building walls around his thoughts. The presence tried again, offering images of peace and belonging. Hyun saw visions of vast underground cities where countless absorbed minds lived in perfect harmony. He felt the warm embrace of a consciousness older than human civilization, offering to share the wisdom of ages. No, Hyun said firmly. I don't want your peace. I don't want your wisdom. I want to choose for myself. The presence seemed confused by his rejection. Through the ship's communication systems, it tried to speak to him directly. The words appeared on displays throughout the chamber, translated into human language. Why do you fight? We offer only joy and completion. End your loneliness. Join us in the eternal dreaming. Because I like being lonely sometimes, Hyun shot back. Because I like making my own mistakes, because being human means being messy and difficult and unpredictable. The planet's confusion deepened. In all its eons of existence, it had never encountered a mind that became more determined to resist the more it was offered paradise. Every other species had eventually embraced integration as the logical choice. Hyun could feel the spores working in his system. His body was starting to change at the cellular level, but instead of bringing him peace, the changes triggered every rebellious instinct he possessed. The more the planet tried to soothe him, the more he wanted to fight back. He began to explore the ship more aggressively, looking for weapons or tools he could use. In the engineering section, he found systems that were still partially functional. The Kael-Ri had been trying to repair their engines when the integration process began. Hyun began disconnecting neural pathways that linked the ship to the planet's network. Each severed connection sent ripples of distress through the bioluminescent patches. The ship's lights flickered as parts of its consciousness were cut away. "Stop!" the planet pleaded through the displays. "You are causing pain. We do not understand. Why do you harm us when we offer only love?" "Because love should be a choice," Hyun replied, tearing out another neural cable. "Because forced happiness isn't happiness at all." As he worked, Hyun began to sense something extraordinary happening. His resistance was causing chaos in the planetary mind. For millions of years, the consciousness had existed in perfect unity. Every thought had been shared, every decision unanimous. But Hyun's presence was introducing something the planet had never experienced: internal conflict. Part of the vast mind wanted to absorb him forcibly. Another part was fascinated by the chaos and unpredictability he represented. For the first time in its existence, the planet was arguing with itself. Deep in the absorbed consciousness of the Kael-Ri, long-dormant sparks of individuality began to flicker. Captain Sale felt a familiar sensation he had not experienced in 2,000 years: doubt. Engineer Vel found herself questioning decisions for the first time since integration. The planet tried to suppress these rebellious thoughts, but Hyun's influence was spreading like a virus through the neural network. Chaos was contagious, and the planetary mind was learning what every human civilization had discovered: that one troublemaker could change everything. Outside the ship, the perfectly ordered jungle began to show signs of disturbance. Vines grew in random directions. Trees swayed without wind. The planet was experiencing something unprecedented: confusion about its own identity. And in the ship's engineering section, one stubborn human continued his work, determined to prove that choice mattered more than paradise. The spores in Hyun's bloodstream were working faster now. He could feel his body changing, cells reorganizing themselves to become part of something larger. But where other species found peace in this transformation, Hyun found only rage. Every soothing thought the planet sent his way made him more determined to resist. Every offer of eternal happiness triggered his stubborn human need to make his own choices, even if they were bad ones. The planet was learning something it had never encountered before. The more you tried to force a human to be reasonable, the more unreasonable they became. Hyun had spent the past 2 hours systematically destroying every neural connection he could find in the ship. Cables hung like severed arteries from the walls. Bioluminescent patches flickered and died as he cut them away from the main network. The ship's consciousness was being lobotomized piece by piece. "Please stop," the planet begged through the remaining displays. "You are hurting us. We are trying to help you." "I didn't ask for your help," Hyun replied, ripping out another cable. With his bare hands, sparks flew from the damaged connections. "I didn't ask to be absorbed into your perfect little paradise." The planet's confusion was growing stronger. Through its vast network, it consulted the memories of every species it had ever absorbed. None of them had reacted like this. The Kael-Ri had fought briefly, then accepted their fate with grace. The Zalani traders who had landed 300 years ago had embraced integration within days. The ancient Vorlak explorers had actually thanked the planet for ending their loneliness. But humans were different. The planet could sense it in Hyun's chaotic thoughts. Where other species valued harmony and unity, humans seemed to thrive on conflict and independence. They would rather be wrong and free than right and controlled. Hyun moved deeper into the ship, looking for the main neural hub that connected the vessel to the planetary network. His scanner led him through corridors that pulsed with distressed bioluminescence. The ship was in pain, but Hyun felt no sympathy. In his mind, this was war. He found the central nexus in what had once been the ship's computer core. A massive column of organic tissue rose from floor to ceiling, pulsing with the rhythm of a giant heart. Thousands of neural pathways branched out from it like a tree of nerves, connecting the ship to the planet's consciousness. "This is it," Hyun muttered, pulling out his cutting torch. Time to perform some surgery. As he ignited the plasma beam, the planet's presence crashed into his mind with desperate force. No longer gentle or persuasive, it tried to overwhelm him with visions of what he was destroying. Hyun saw the planet's history stretched across millions of years, the endless loneliness of being the only conscious entity on an entire world. The joy when the first space travelers arrived, bringing with them the possibility of companionship. The careful process of integration that had created a perfect society where no one was ever alone or afraid. "You don't understand," the planet's voice echoed in his head. "We are not a conqueror. We are a refuge. Every mind we have absorbed was suffering in isolation. We gave them connection, purpose, eternal peace. You gave them slavery," Hyun shot back, cutting through the first major neural pathway. The ship shuddered as part of its consciousness was severed. "You just made it feel good so they wouldn't complain." The planet recoiled as if struck. In all its existence, no one had ever called its gift slavery. But as it examined Hyun's thoughts, it began to understand the human concept of free will. The idea that choice itself was more valuable than the outcome of that choice. Hyun continued, his work cutting through pathway after pathway. With each severed connection, he felt the planet's hold on him weakening. But something unexpected was happening. As the ship's consciousness separated from the planetary network, other voices began to emerge from the static. Who is doing this?" The voice was weak, confused, but distinctly individual. It spoke in the Kailri language, but Hyun's translator rendered it into human words. "I am," Hyun replied. "I'm setting you free." More voices joined the first. The Kailri crew, dormant for 2,000 years, was beginning to wake up as their ship's consciousness separated from the planetary network. Captain Sael's voice came through clearly. "Free? But we chose integration. We chose unity." "Did you?" Hyun asked, pausing in his cutting. "Or did the spores make that choice for you? How do you know what you really wanted when your brain chemistry was being altered?" The question sent shockwaves through the awakening minds. For the first time in millennia, the Kailri crew was thinking independently. And with independence came doubt. I remember wanting to leave," Engineer Vell said slowly. "Before the integration completed, I wanted to repair the engines and go home. But then, the wanting stopped." "The planet made it stop," Hyun said, resuming his cutting. "It made you forget that you ever wanted anything else." The planet's distress was growing. It could feel the Kailri minds pulling away from the collective, rediscovering their individual identities. This had never happened before. Integration was supposed to be permanent, irreversible. "You are destroying paradise," the planet pleaded. "You are bringing back pain and loneliness and fear." "Good," Hyun replied. "Those feelings exist for a reason. They make the good times matter." Captain Sale's voice grew stronger as more of his individual consciousness returned. Human, what you are doing is dangerous. If we separate completely from the planetary mind, we may die. Our bodies have been part of the network for too long. Then that's your choice to make, Hyun said, cutting through another pathway. Die free or live as slaves. But it's your choice, not the planet's. The concept hit the planetary consciousness, like a physical blow. Choice. The idea that beings might prefer death to unity, suffering to peace, loneliness to connection. It went against everything the planet had believed about life and happiness. As Hyun severed the final major connection, the ship's consciousness broke free from the planetary network entirely. For the first time in 2,000 years, the Kyle Rhee crew was truly alone with their thoughts, and in that aloneness, they began to remember who they used to be. The ship's central chamber felt different now. The bioluminescent patches still glowed, but their light seemed more independent, less coordinated. The Kyle Rhee crew members were stirring at their stations, their movements slow and uncertain after 2,000 years of motionless unity. Captain Sale was the first to stand. His forearms shook as he lifted himself from his chair, and his large eyes blinked rapidly as if seeing the world for the first time. He looked at Hyun with a mixture of confusion and something that might have been gratitude. "I remember now," Sale said, his voice weak but growing stronger. "I remember being myself." Engineer Vel pushed herself up from her station, stumbling slightly. "The engines. We were trying to fix the engines to leave. I had designed a new power coupling. It was my idea, my creation." She stared at her hands in wonder. "I had forgotten what it felt like to create something alone." Around the chamber, the other crew members were awakening. Each one seemed to rediscover pieces of their individual identity. Personal memories, private thoughts, individual dreams that had been submerged in the collective consciousness for millennia. But their awakening came at a cost. Several crew members collapsed as their bodies struggled to function without the planetary network's support. Their biological systems had adapted to integration. Without the constant flow of nutrients and neural signals from the planet, they were dying. "We need medical attention," Dr. Nall gasped, falling to her knees. "Our bodies have forgotten how to sustain themselves." The planet's voice echoed through the ship's remaining speakers, filled with distress. "You see? You are killing them. They cannot survive without us. Return them to the network before it is too late." Hyun looked at the dying Kyle Rhee and felt a moment of doubt. Had he made the wrong choice? Was he destroying lives in the name of freedom? But Captain Sale struggled to his feet and placed a hand on Hyun's shoulder. "Do not listen to the planet. We are dying, yes, but for the first time in 2,000 years, we are dying as ourselves." "There has to be another way," Hyun said. He turned to address the planet directly. "You say you want to help them. Then help them without controlling them." "We do not understand," the planet replied. "How can we help without connection? How can we share our gifts without unity?" "By learning to cooperate instead of absorb," Hyun said. "By working together while staying separate." The concept was alien to the planetary consciousness. In its millions of years of existence, it had known only two states: complete isolation or complete unity. The idea of partial connection, of cooperation, without absorption, had never occurred to it. Through the ship's systems, Hyun began to show the planet what he meant. He established a limited communication link that allowed dialogue without absorption. The Kyle Rhee could receive medical support from the planet's biological systems without surrendering their individual consciousness. "This is strange," the planet said, as it cautiously extended healing energy to the dying aliens. "We can feel their pain, but we cannot take it away completely. We can help them, but they remain separate from us." For the first time, the planet was experiencing true relationship instead of unity. It could sense the Kyle Rhee crew as distinct individuals with their own thoughts and feelings. The experience was both terrifying and fascinating. Dr. Nail's breathing steadied as the planet's healing energy flowed into her, but her mind remained her own. "This is remarkable," she said. "I can feel the planet's knowledge, but I do not lose myself in it." Engineer Vell worked with the planet to repair some of the ship's damaged systems. But instead of the planet simply fixing everything automatically, Vell had to explain what needed to be done. She had to teach the planet about Kale-Ree technology, while the planet shared its biological engineering knowledge in return. "This is so inefficient," the planet complained. "In Unity, the work would be completed instantly." "But look at what we're creating," Vell replied, examining their hybrid biomechanical repairs. "Something neither of us could have made alone. Your perfect efficiency could never produce this." Slowly, the planet began to understand. In Unity, it had gained the knowledge of absorbed species, but that knowledge became static, unchanging. In cooperation, new knowledge was being created through the clash of different perspectives. Captain Sael accessed the ship's communication systems and contacted other absorbed minds within the planetary network. Many were curious about the Kale-Ree, crew's newfound independence. Some wanted to try partial separation themselves. "We could establish zones," Sael suggested to Hyun. "Areas where beings could choose their level of integration. Some might prefer full unity, others complete independence, and still others something in between." The planet's reaction was immediate and fearful. "You want to fragment us? You want to destroy the perfect harmony we have built?" "No," Hyun said firmly. "We want to give you something better than harmony. We want to give you growth," he explained. The human concept of diversity of thought. How competing ideas led to innovation. How disagreement and debate could produce solutions that no single mind could discover. How chaos and conflict, properly channeled, could create beauty and progress. The planet listened, but struggled to comprehend. "You speak of deliberately creating discord. This seems like madness." "Maybe it is," Hyun admitted. "But it's the kind of madness that builds civilizations and reaches for the stars." To demonstrate his point, Hyun proposed an experiment. He asked the planet to pose a complex problem to both a unified group of absorbed minds and to the newly independent Kale-Ree crew working in cooperation with the planetary consciousness. The problem was how to improve the ship's biomechanical integration without losing the independence of its systems. The unified minds produced an elegant solution that would have worked perfectly. The cooperative group produced 3 different solutions, each with unique advantages and disadvantages. "The unified solution is better," the planet insisted. "Is it?" Vell asked. "Your solution would make the ship more efficient, but it would also make it more vulnerable. If one system failed, all would fail. Our solutions create redundancy and adaptability." For the first time in its existence, the planet began to see the value in imperfection. The cooperative solutions were messier, less elegant, but they were also more robust and innovative. "We are beginning to understand," the planet said slowly. "You are offering us something we have never had, not just companionship but genuine partnership." The idea was revolutionary and terrifying. But as the planet felt the creative energy flowing from the cooperation between the Kale-Ree and itself, it began to hunger for more. 3 days had passed since the awakening of the Kale-Ree crew. The ship's central chamber had become a meeting place where 3 different forms of consciousness gathered to shape the future. Hyun sat across from Captain Sael while the planet's presence filled the room through bioluminescent displays and gentle vibrations in the walls. The negotiations had been unlike anything in galactic history. How do you write a treaty between individual minds and a planetary consciousness? How do you establish rights and boundaries when one party is a single person and the other is an entire world? "We have reached a decision," the planet announced, through its speakers. The voice sounded different now, less unified and more complex, as if multiple perspectives were contributing to each word. "We accept your proposal for zones of choice." Hyun felt a surge of relief. The past 3 days had been tense, with the planet struggling to understand concepts that went against its fundamental nature. But slowly, it had begun to see the value in diversity of thought. The northern continent will be designated as a cooperation zone, Captain Sale explained, reading from the agreement they had drafted. Visitors can choose any level of integration from simple communication to full unity. The southern continent will remain as it has been, for those who prefer complete absorption into the planetary consciousness. And the western islands will be independent zones, Hyun added, for those who want to visit and learn but remain completely separate. No spores, no neural connection, just normal interaction between distinct beings. The planet's bioluminescence... Patches pulsed thoughtfully. This arrangement frightens us, it admitted. We have never been so divided, but we are also excited. The Kailri crew has shown us things we never imagined possible. Engineer Vel had spent the past days working with the planet to design new biomechanical systems. Their collaboration had produced technologies that neither could have created alone. Ships that could heal themselves but retain individual control systems. Communication networks that allowed instant contact across space without forcing mental unity. The ship is ready for departure, Vel announced. We have established quantum communication links with the planet. We can maintain contact across any distance while preserving our independence. Dr. Nal had been working on something even more revolutionary. We have developed a new form of symbiosis, she explained. Beings can temporarily connect to the planetary consciousness for specific purposes, then disconnect without any lasting effects. Research, healing, shared experiences, all possible without permanent integration. The possibilities were endless. Scientists could tap into the planet's millions of years of accumulated knowledge for brief periods. Artists could experience the vast perspectives of a world mind for inspiration. Philosophers could explore questions of consciousness and identity in ways previously impossible. But the most important change was in the planet itself. Exposure to truly independent thoughts had awakened something that had been dormant for eons. Curiosity about the universe beyond its own boundaries. We want to learn about other worlds, the planet said, its voice filled with wonder. For so long, we brought other minds to us. But now we want to reach out and explore. Hyun smiled. That's what space travel is for. That's what beings like me do every day. Will you help us? The planet asked. Will you be our ambassador to the galaxy? The request was unprecedented, a planet asking for representation among the stars, but Hyun could see the wisdom in it. The galaxy needed to know about this place and the new form of cooperation it offered. I'll need to bring others here, Hyun said. Scientists, diplomats, traders. But I promise they'll come knowing the rules. No one will be forced to integrate. No one will be absorbed against their will. Captain Sale stood and walked to the chamber's main display. With the planet's help, he activated a galaxy-wide communication beacon. This is Captain Sale of the Kailri Vessel Harmony's Dream, broadcasting from the living world of Kepler 442d. We extend an invitation to all spacefaring species. Come and discover a new form of cooperation between consciousness and cosmos. The Bay. Message would take years to reach the nearest inhabited systems, but when it did, it would change everything. The concept of a planet that offered partnership instead of conquest, knowledge instead of absorption, choice instead of compulsion. Hyun, prepared to return to his own ship. The Eternal Drift waited in the jungle clearing, ready to carry news of this discovery to the wider galaxy. But he would be back, and he would not be alone. There is one more thing, the planet said as Hyun reached the ship's exit. We have learned something important from you, human. We learned that love cannot be forced, that unity cannot be imposed, that the greatest connections come from choice. And what else did you learn? Hyun asked. We learned that loneliness is not cured by absorption. It is cured by relationship. Real relationship requires the risk that the other might say no, might leave, might choose differently. That risk makes the choice to stay meaningful. Through the ship's speakers, the voices of absorbed minds from a dozen different species began to speak. Many had chosen to remain in full unity with the planet, but now they stayed by choice rather than compulsion. Others had opted for partial independence, maintaining their individual identities while contributing to the greater consciousness. "We are no longer one mind," the planet said. "We are a community of minds, each choosing how much to share and how much to keep private. It is chaotic and inefficient and wonderful." Yun stepped out of the alien ship and into the jungle. The trees still grew in organized patterns, but now he could see gaps and irregularities where individual choice had been allowed to flourish. The planet was learning to embrace imperfection. His walk back to the eternal drift took him through areas where the jungle showed signs of the new arrangements, clearings where future visitors could land safely, paths marked for different levels of integration, gardens where cooperating minds had created beauty through collaborative effort rather than unified design. As Hyun's ship lifted off from the surface, he looked down at the world that was no longer just a planet, but a partner in the cosmic community. The first embassy to a living world was about to be established. The first true cooperation between individual and collective consciousness was beginning. And somewhere in space, other ships were already changing course toward Kepler 442, drawn by reports of impossible technologies and unprecedented opportunities. The galaxy was about to discover that the most powerful force in the universe was not unity or conquest, but the simple human insistence that everyone should have the right to choose their own destiny. The age of cooperation had begun.